One of the essential things when you're travelling is to do what we call an under bonnet check. In reality, if you're on a holiday, you should be checking this every day. And if you're about to head out for work, you should be checking the vehicle prior to leaving, headquarters, home base. So what are we going to check? Well, first up, we're going to check the radiator. We're going to see if there is actually fluid in the radiator. You'll look for the overflow tank. We'll show you where that is, and you want to look and see where the level is. There's usually a full and an empty marker on the edge of the tank, and the fluid level should be somewhere between that area that's marked empty to full. Now, the radiator fluid itself is either pink or blue or green, and the good thing is that with that colour it's easy to spot in the overflow tank, but also if it's dripping, if there is a leak somewhere from the system, if you see that coloured water appearing under the vehicle, that's an alarm bell straight away. You know you've got a leak in the system. Okay. Next thing, of course, is the oil level in the engine. So you need to find the dipstick. Most of them are marked either yellow or white, painted on the top of the dipstick. You pull that right out of the engine bay and hold it up and look at the end of it, and you should see either a hatched section or again a full and a low marker. Might just be a dimple on it. Each dipstick's a little bit different. The oil level should be somewhere between those two markers or in that hatch section. If you notice when you're checking this, as I say, this is a daily check, that's dropping, you know you are either burning oil or losing oil. And again, that's an alarm bell. That's something you need to be looked at before you go further into the bush. Okay. We want to look at the battery. Now with the battery, we want to make sure, first of all, it is secured firmly in the engine bay. So you want to grab the battery and see if there's any movement. Shake it and see if there's any movement. If there is, you might need to tighten down the wing nuts that are holding it in place. They can come loose on the corrugations. Okay. Then if it's a battery that you can actually check the level of the water in each cell, you can undo each of those caps on each cell, peer in the top and look to see if the water is covering the little metal plates. If you've got a dry plate, that battery is starting to get towards the end of its life. I would recommend topping it up, just use any kind of water, but next time you're in a town somewhere, you'll need to go and buy yourself a new battery because that will continue to use the water in that battery. If it's a sealed unit, which many batteries are now, you may not be able to check it at all. Some of them do have a little inspection hole, and they usually have a little imprint on top of the battery that indicates what colour that should be. Green's usually good, green for go. Right? Red might mean it needs to be recharged, and black may mean that it's near the end of its life. So again, it's probably time to replace that battery or recharge it if the battery's been sitting a while and you haven't started the vehicle. Okay. The other things to check are other fluid levels. You really want to have water in your washer bottle. We're going to talk a lot about traction and being able to assess the track. So you need to be able to see through the windscreen. So make sure your water bottle is topped up. The other fluid levels, things like brakes. Okay, so your brakes operate on fluid. They all have a clear container which you can usually see the level through, and again they're marked min and max, and again you only need to look at the outside of that to establish if the fluid level is going down. Little word of advice here though, if you're losing brake fluid, you'll probably know it because your brake pedal is going to be really spongy. It'll probably go to the floor with the more pressure you push on it. So if that's happening, you know you've got a leak in the system. That's going to be immediately go to a workshop and get that looked at. Other fluid levels, power steering, they have a little dipstick on them. In fact, a little cap you unscrew and pull the dipstick out. It'll have a high and a low marker, so you can look at that. But again, if you've got a leak in the power steering, your power steering or your steering is going to become extremely heavy. You'll know pretty much straight away. And if there's a leak because it's under high pressure, it will have a lot of oil being blown out of the hose somewhere under the engine bay. So that one's going to be pretty obvious. If you've got a vehicle with a manual clutch, for example, you will have clutch fluid, same deal, will be next to the brake canister, and that will probably show you again a min and a max level. All right, so they're the fluid levels that you can check on your vehicle. A couple other things that you want to check before you head away. I'd run a tyre gauge around my tyres and just see what the tyre pressure is. Of course, you'd be far better off if you had a tyre pressure monitoring system in your vehicle, which was displaying how much the air pressure is in each tyre all the time. And here at Great Divide Tours, we highly recommend that you have a tyre pressure monitoring system fitted. Look, you know, for $100 you can buy one on eBay. Why wouldn't you do it, all right? So after you've checked the tyre pressure, I want you to check the tyres for any actual damage. So look at the sidewalls in particular for cuts or bubbles in the sidewall. That will be a sure sign that there could be a problem. And don't forget, look underneath the vehicle at the sidewall of the tyres as well, because they're just as likely to get damaged, especially when you're off-road. Look underneath the vehicle. We are looking for any oil leaks. Right now there's oil obviously in the engine, there's oil in the differentials, there's oil in the gearbox, in the auto transmission, there's even oil in your shock absorbers. So you want to look at those and see if they're all covered in a greasy, oily mixture, because if that's the case, that shock's at the end of its life. Before you go further into the deep bush, you want to think about getting that item repaired or replaced. Okay. You also look to see if you are dragging any sticks, and you might have been off-road. If you've got a stick caught up underneath the vehicle, you want to make sure that that's not still there, because it can jag on the ground and it might rip out something important, like a brake line or an electrical component. So you look under your vehicle and you look to see if there's anything that doesn't look right. When you walk around your vehicle, I call it the sniff, smell and look, all right? If you smell oil or diesel or petrol, you've probably got an oil leak or a diesel leak or a petrol leak. Investigate it, all right? If you can see that there's water, especially coloured water, dripping out of the front of the car, that's probably a leak in the engine bay from the radiator system. If you can hear something hissing, it might be a tyre going down. All right, so be aware of how your car should be, and you can identify if something's gone wrong, and you can pick it up before it becomes a major problem. Old Vic says, a stitch in time can save 9.